There are mistakes in the game of power that you will never find written in any law book. No constitution warns you about them. No polite speech about morality or justice will ever mention them. These mistakes are quiet. They don't come with swords, drama, or loud explosions. They only need one thing from you: your tolerance. The moment you let a wrong action slide, the second you shrug and say, "It's not a big deal," when you turn a blind eye to a tiny crack in trust, that is the moment you begin writing your own downfall. This isn't a bedtime story for people who want a peaceful life. This is a brutal lesson for men who want to hold power and actually keep it. Empires don't fall in one night. Companies don't explode in one day. Leaders don't collapse from a single punch. Power erodes. Piece by piece. Decision by decision. Compromise by compromise. It's eaten away by betrayal, by greed, by the quiet actions of people who smile in public and dig your grave in private. And if you don't see it, if you don't confront it, you will not be destroyed by the enemies who openly stand against you. You'll be destroyed by the ones who stand beside you and pretend to be on your side. Today, we're going to expose 7 behaviors you must never tolerate from anyone, not friends, not partners, not family, not anyone. These are the 7 silent poisons that corrode your throne, your reputation, your sanity, and your trust. If you are someone people follow, if you are building a life that you refuse to let others break, then you need to stay until the very end. And I'll tell you something straight. If what you hear in this video touches a nerve, if it exposes a truth you've been denying, that's not an accident. That's your wake-up call. So if this hits you, like the video, subscribe and share it with men who need to stop being naive about loyalty, about power, and about people. Because sometimes your survival doesn't depend on how strong your body is, but on how clearly your mind sees what must never be forgiven. Let's start with the first behavior. Behavior 1. The person who disappears in crisis. People love to say, "You only really know someone over time." Machiavelli went deeper. He didn't measure loyalty in months or years. He measured it in storms. When everything is going well, everyone is loyal. When the money is flowing, when success is shining on you, people line up to stand close. They celebrate with you. They drink with you. They laugh loudly at your jokes. They slap you on the back and say things like, "I've always got your back, brother." It's easy to promise loyalty when there's nothing to lose. But watch what happens when the sky darkens, when the ship starts to shake, when the storm hits your life, when blood metaphorically starts to spill your career, your reputation, your money, your relationships. That is when you finally see the truth. You've seen it before. Maybe you're seeing it right now. The people who were always present at your victories vanish at your defeats. No call, no message, no visit. Just a cold, empty silence where "I'm always here for you" used to be. That silence is not neutral. It is a message. The most disturbing part? Many of them will come back later when you've survived, when you've rebuilt, when the fire is under control. They'll return with explanations. "I didn't know what to say. I had my own problems. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how." Sounds reasonable, right? Machiavelli would tell you, don't believe a word of it. Nothing is louder than silence when you needed someone the most. Someone who can abandon you once can and will abandon you again, if you allow them back into the same position in your life. When you forgive that kind of betrayal out of weakness, out of loneliness, or out of fear of being alone, you're not just giving them another chance. You're sending a signal to everyone watching. That signal says, there are no consequences for betrayal here. From that moment on, understand this clearly. The loyalty around you is no longer real loyalty. It becomes conditional. It's based on your status, your money, your influence on what you can offer, not on who you are. You stop being a leader in their eyes. You become a number they constantly recalculate. Is he still worth standing next to? At that point, you are no longer the king. You are a product. And products are replaceable. You don't need a crowd. You don't need hundreds of fake supporters. You need one real person who stands beside you when everything is collapsing. One person who doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient. That one person is worth more than 100 who only appear for the party, never for the war. Machiavelli understood that betrayal is not just emotional, it is structural. It weakens the architecture of power itself. When your people see that you can be left alone, that you can be deserted without consequences, something shifts in their minds. You stop looking untouchable. They stop believing you are solid. And once the illusion of stability cracks, your power becomes a chair that anyone feels bold enough to sit in. Remember this line and burn it into your mind. No one stays loyal to a leader who allows himself to be left in isolation. The one who disappears in your darkest moment will be the first to throw the knife when you are too weak to defend yourself. They will wear your colors, sit at your table, agree with your plans, but when their strength is needed, they vanish. And when you rise again, they show up smiling like nothing happened. Don't think, they probably had a good reason. Machiavelli would look you in the eye and remind you, absence is a statement. It is a deliberate choice. People always find a way when it truly matters to them. So when you called and they didn't answer, when you fell and no hand reached out, when you were surrounded by problems and they were suddenly too busy, don't waste your energy analyzing excuses. Remember faces. Remember who is missing. And if you survive that storm, never allow those faces to return to their original positions in your life. Because every time you let someone like that back in, you create a rule for everyone around you. You don't have to be loyal. Just leave when things get hard. Then come back once everything is safe again. You are not building an inner circle that way. You are building a rotating door for opportunists. That is not how empires are built. That is exactly how they begin to rot from the inside. Behavior 2. The leader who is afraid of his own power. Now, let's move to the second behavior. This one is deadly. The coward on the throne. Most people think the biggest threat to a kingdom, a business, a family, or a team is a ruthless enemy. They imagine secret plots, conspiracies in the shadows, organized betrayals. And yes, those can be dangerous. But Machiavelli teaches something colder. The fastest way to destroy any structure of power is to put a fearful leader at the top. Cowardice doesn't always look like shaking hands or stuttering speech. It rarely announces itself that clearly. Often, it hides behind what looks like virtue. It disguises itself as careful thinking. It calls itself prudence. It says, we need more time to discuss. We should wait. We should be sure. But it's not wisdom. It's avoidance. It's fear of responsibility. It's that quiet voice saying, if I make a strong decision and it goes wrong, I'll be blamed. So instead of deciding, the coward delays. Instead of leading, he hides behind committees, votes, and endless meetings. And here is what you must understand. A fearful leader doesn't just destroy himself. He infects the entire system beneath him with doubt. When the man at the top refuses to command, when he constantly looks around for someone else to make the call, when even small decisions require everyone's approval, people eventually stop believing in him. The moment his followers stop believing, you don't even need enemies. The structure begins tearing itself apart from the inside. Imagine you're on a battlefield. The enemy is advancing. You look up at your commander, and he's hesitating, checking, rechecking, second-guessing every option. Every second that passes costs lives, territory, and morale. How long before you stop trusting him? How long before you start secretly thinking about your own exit plan? That's how fear spreads, quietly, from the top down. It destroys order, discipline, and confidence without firing a single shot. And Machiavelli saw this clearly. Every second of hesitation in a leader is a knife in the heart of the system he's supposed to protect. An army doesn't panic because the enemy is strong. It panics because the commander doesn't know what to do. Leadership is not about waiting for perfect certainty. It's the skill of acting boldly while everyone else is drowning in doubt. No leader on earth can guarantee the perfect decision every time. But strength means taking the risk anyway, in the exact moment when action matters most. In those moments when every eye is watching you, when the air becomes heavy, when silence itself feels like pressure. A true leader steps forward, not because he has no fear, but because he knows that showing fear will collapse everything under him. Some people hide their fear behind morality. They talk endlessly about peace, patience, the importance of discussion, of being ethical, of taking the safe route. But if you look closer, you'll notice something. They're not afraid of doing the wrong thing. They're afraid of doing the right thing because the right thing is always harder. They're not sitting back to think. They're sitting back to run. A real leader doesn't hide behind counsels or excuses. He doesn't delay decisions until someone else takes responsibility for him. He knows power doesn't belong to the one who waits, but to the one who steps up, even in uncertainty. Decisiveness, clarity, action. These are the traits that keep a throne standing in a world that never stops shaking. If you want to lead anything, your life, your family, your business, your niche, you must learn to act first and explain later. And never let fear disguise itself as calm restraint. People may respect a strong, even ruthless leader, but they will despise a man who is too scared to lead. Behavior 3. The person who always agrees with you. Let's talk about a danger sweeter than betrayal and more comfortable than loyalty. The constant flatterer. There is a certain type of person who never says no to you. They nod at everything. They smile at everything. They agree with everything. And in the halls of power, they are the most dangerous people alive. Machiavelli didn't fear the enemies who openly opposed him. He feared the ones behind him, the ones who praised him too quickly, too gently, too consistently. Because enemies make you aware, but flatterers put you to sleep. Flattery is not harmless kindness. It is a slow, painful poison. It doesn't kill instantly, no. It dissolves your judgment one compliment at a time. It destroys the inner strength that keeps you grounded. It blinds you to danger and inflates your ego until your throne becomes a pillow, easy to sit on and easy to lose. Flatterers aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to the opportunities around you. They don't say what you need to hear. They say what you wish were true. And the moment you start enjoying their praise, your leadership begins to rot from the inside. You stop hearing the truth. You stop sensing danger. You stop listening to warnings. You look around, and instead of allies, you're surrounded by mirrors that show you only yourself. When a leader becomes addicted to praise, he becomes blind. And blindness is always followed by downfall. These people will clap for you, praise your decisions, tell you how brilliant you are, even when you're making mistakes that will cost you everything. Why? Because they don't care if you fall. They only care if they can stay close to the flame of power before it burns out. A loyal person will sometimes make you uncomfortable. They will challenge you. They will tell you when you're wrong. They don't do it to disrespect you. They do it because they want you to survive. They want your structure to remain strong. But a flatterer? They only care about staying in your shadow long enough to get what they want. And the moment your power collapses, the moment you fall from your throne, they will be the first to distance themselves, or worse, they will switch sides while wearing the same smile they used on you. Machiavelli warned us, never confuse a flatterer with a loyal ally. One protects you, the other disarms you. So take a look at the people in your life. Who has never said no to you? Who always compliments you at the exact right moment? Who always agrees with your decisions, even when you know you might be wrong? That's not loyalty. That's a parasite feeding on your pride. If you want to keep your power, your influence, your confidence, your reputation, you must be strong enough to hear truth and smart enough to recognize sweet, calculated lies. A compliment given at the wrong time is far more dangerous than a warning delivered at the perfect time. Behavior 4. Public disrespect or challenge. Power isn't just built on laws, weapons, or titles. Power is built on perception, the belief that you are untouchable, and this belief is fragile. It holds whole empires together, yet it can be shattered by something as simple as a public joke. One mocking laugh at your expense. One person bold enough to challenge your authority in front of others. One moment where someone targets you in the spotlight. In that instant, your power loses its first drop of blood. A public challenge doesn't need to overthrow you. It only needs to plant a seed. If he can question him, why can't I? And once that idea enters the minds of the crowd, you're no longer a leader in their eyes. You're a man being tested. Once they sense vulnerability, the whispers begin. The doubts start spreading. People don't attack you with swords. They attack you with questions. They don't need a rebellion. They only need uncertainty. If you laugh off a public insult, if you try to take the high road, if you let it slide to appear calm, you haven't shown wisdom. You've shown weakness. And weakness in public is an invitation for others to rise against you. Because Machiavelli understood something most modern leaders forget. Power does not require cruelty, but it demands consequences. You don't need to punish private disagreements. You don't need to crush every opinion. But any public defiance must be addressed clearly, firmly, and immediately, not for your ego, but for the eyes watching. Because when someone challenges you openly and you do nothing, people start thinking, maybe he's not in control. Maybe he can be replaced. That is how a throne becomes a chair. Once the precedent is set, once one person gets away with open disrespect, every opportunist in the room suddenly grows a spine. You don't need to defend every argument. You don't need to justify yourself to the crowd. You only need to respond in a way that makes one thing undeniable. A leader who doesn't protect his authority loses it. Some people will challenge you under the disguise of morality. They'll say, "I'm just speaking truth," or "I'm only doing what's right." Don't be fooled. Anyone who elevates their virtue above your authority is secretly signaling that they should be in charge. They're using public judgment as a weapon, not as guidance. Machiavelli was right. Anyone who publicly questions you is already campaigning to replace you. And if you don't act, if you tolerate these performances disguised as honesty, your throne becomes their stage. You become an actor in your own downfall. If what you're hearing feels familiar, if you've ever been publicly challenged by someone who pretended it was just a joke or just honesty, then keep listening. Because this lesson becomes even more important as we move deeper into the psychology of collapse. Behavior 5. Ingratitude after you've shown mercy. Now we reach one of the most painful poisons, the ungrateful. In the world of power, your enemy isn't always the one who opposes you. Sometimes, It's the one you saved. The one you lifted up. The one you believed in, helped, supported, guided, and who later turned on you without hesitation. Machiavelli warned, "Nothing destroys power faster than ingratitude." Why? Because ingratitude is not simply forgetting a kindness. It is declaring that your generosity meant nothing. It says, "What you gave me is irrelevant. What you sacrificed doesn't matter. I owe you nothing." It is loyalty cut at the root. Ingratitude is the coldest form of betrayal because it doesn't strike with noise. It doesn't argue. It doesn't fight. It simply withdraws its loyalty and lets you fall while pretending nothing was ever owed. And the ungrateful feel no guilt, none. In their minds, everything you did for them was just part of the deal. They don't see loyalty as a bond. They see it as a transaction, and once the transaction ends, so does their loyalty. Worse, when they sense your position shaking even slightly, they won't just leave. They'll weaponize their history with you. They'll whisper to your enemies, "I used to be close to him. I know where the cracks are. I know what to hit." And the most agonizing part, you opened the door for them. You trusted them. You lifted them high enough to hurt you. This is why Machiavelli did not say, "Stop helping people." He said, "Never invest in barren ground. Never waste your mercy on someone who has no integrity, no gratitude, no principle." Mercy is not a gift. It is a tool. Given to the right person, it creates a lifelong ally. Given to the wrong person, it creates a parasite who eats your kingdom from the inside. The ungrateful follow no one. They serve no one. They protect nothing. They take until there's nothing left, and then they leave without a second thought. You'll see them everywhere in life. When you're winning, they swarm like bees to honey. They praise you. They call you brother. They make promises of eternal loyalty. But the moment you fall just once, they disappear faster than the word "thank you." And if you rise again, they'll return with perfect timing. Same voice, same charm, same loyal smile. But this time, they're not coming back to support you. They're coming back to position themselves for the next opportunity. Machiavelli taught, "Never let gratitude become hope. Let it become a test. And once the test fails, never test again." Ungrateful people do not change. They only learn to hide their nature more skillfully. So how do you spot them early? Watch what happens when you stop giving. Do they grow distant? Do they go quiet? Do they stop caring? Do they treat you as if you've lost value? That's your answer. Because to the ungrateful, you are only valuable as long as you're useful. The moment you stop feeding them, they stop pretending. Leaders who tolerate ingratitude do not just lose resources, they lose the foundation of their power. Because the ones who rose through your generosity also know your weaknesses. They know your blind spots. They know you forgive too easily, that you give second chances, that you fear letting go, and they will use that knowledge to destroy you. Remember this rule: gratitude cannot be demanded, but ingratitude must be punished. If you give a second chance to someone who betrayed you once, the entire world learns one lesson. Treason isn't dangerous here. Failure is. This is how kingdoms rot. This is how organizations crumble. This is how reputations collapse. Not because of enemies outside the walls, but because of those inside. Those you once saved. Behavior 6. Ambition without loyalty. Now we move to a behavior Machiavelli feared as much as betrayal: the ambitious man with no loyalty. Ambition by itself is not evil. In fact, Machiavelli believed ambition is the engine that drives empires. It pushes average men to rise. It gives the weak the strength to break their limits. It fuels innovation, courage, and growth. But ambition without loyalty, that is a weapon pointed at the heart of power. A man who dreams big but serves no one. A man who works hard but commits to nothing. A man who speaks well but promises nothing. A man with talent but no allegiance. This is not an asset. This is a threat waiting for opportunity. These men are masters of pretending to be neutral. They never take sides, never oppose anyone directly, never reveal their true intentions. To an untrained eye, they look trustworthy, calm, professional. But neutrality, in the world of power, is often a mask. They're observing, recording, studying, waiting. Every time you hesitate, every time you reveal a weakness, every time you let your guard down, they take note. And when the moment comes, when the throne shakes, when doubt spreads, when people start whispering, they will be the first to step forward and position themselves as the solution. They don't want to support power. They want to replace it. If you are a leader and you spot a man with exceptional talent, strong will, and great ambition, but absolutely no long-term loyalty, you have two choices. Either bind him tightly to your destiny, or eliminate his influence before he eliminates yours. Because once such a man grows powerful and escapes your control, he becomes a threat simply by existing. These men avoid attention. They avoid offending anyone. They avoid commitment because commitment limits their options. They stay perfectly in the middle so they can pivot in any direction when the winds shift. They'll reject compliments in public to appear humble. They'll seek validation in private to fuel their ego. They'll help you only when it benefits them. They'll vanish when you truly need them. They are shadows, quiet, flexible, always watching. Machiavelli said leaders must never allow ambitious but disloyal men to roam freely. Tie them to you with rewards, with future promises, with shared risks, anything that binds their fate to your fate. If you can't tie them down, do not let them rise. Because no matter how brilliant they are, a man without loyalty is a ticking bomb. Ask yourself, if I lost my power tomorrow, would this man still stand with me? If your answer is not an immediate, solid yes, then he is not an ally. He is a contender for your throne. When the day comes, he won't overthrow you loudly. He will replace you quietly, smoothly, as if he were always meant to sit where you sit. If you've ever met someone who is always in the middle, always undecided, always politely agreeable, yet somehow always near the center of power, you know exactly the type of danger we're talking about. Behavior 7. The person who weaponizes morality. Now we arrive at the final poison, moral manipulation. Some people don't shout. They don't rebel. They don't attack openly. Yet they can collapse an entire empire simply by appearing virtuous. Machiavelli understood this long before modern politics turned it into a trend. When morality is used as a weapon, it destroys power faster than any sword. These people march under banners of justice. They speak of compassion, fairness, transparency. They hold themselves as the moral superior in every room. But look deeper. They don't care about moral truth. They care about the throne. Because when someone challenges your authority publicly on moral grounds, they are not trying to correct you. They are auditioning for your role. They ask questions like, is he really a good leader? Don't we deserve someone better? They don't want answers. They want doubt. Once a leader is forced to defend his morality publicly, he has already lost half his power. Why? Because now he is judged not on strength, competence, or results, but on whether he meets the impossible standards of public moral performance. This is the trap. If you defend yourself, you look guilty. If you say nothing, you look guilty, and the person attacking you walks away looking righteous. Machiavelli warned rulers never to let morality become the rope around their necks. Once people believe they can pressure you emotionally, they will keep doing it. And soon, anyone with enough charisma to pretend they care about the people can overthrow you without ever lifting a sword. Real morality is quiet. Fake morality requires an audience. The truly ethical person speaks to you privately. The false saint performs in public. If someone calls you out in front of a crowd for the sake of the crowd, they're not helping you. They're campaigning against you. If you tolerate them, your throne becomes a stage for their performance. Your authority becomes their stepping stone. If you've ever been guilt-tripped, shamed, or pressured by someone pretending to be morally superior, someone who uses morality not to guide you but to control you, you have already seen this weapon in action. And it is deadly. We've now walked through the first 6 behaviors, the silent poisons that quietly eat away at your foundation. But before we close this out, we need to tie everything together, because Machiavelli's final warning isn't just about individuals. It's about systems, about patterns, about what happens when a leader tolerates even one of these behaviors. First, let's recap the truth he understood better than most modern leaders ever will. Power is never destroyed in a single moment. It dissolves slowly, quietly, invisibly, through the small acts you chose to ignore. Betrayal during crisis. Cowardice in leadership. Flattery disguised as loyalty. Public disrespect. Ingratitude after mercy. Ambition without loyalty. Morality used as a weapon. Each one looks small in the moment. Each one appears manageable. Each one tempts you to say, "It's not worth the fight." But Machiavelli would tell you, every time you tolerate a poison, you rewrite the rules of your kingdom. Think about betrayal. When someone abandons you in crisis and you let them back in, you're teaching everyone around you that loyalty is optional. People stop asking, "How can I serve?" and start calculating, "How much can I get away with?" Think about cowardice. When a leader hesitates, people beneath him feel the weakness ripple downward. No one needs to rebel, because the structure begins falling on its own. Think about flattery. When a leader surrounds himself with yes men, he stops seeing danger entirely. He becomes blind, not because his enemies are strong, but because his inner circle is soft. Think about public disrespect. Allow one person to challenge you in front of others without consequence, and you give every opportunist a green light to test your limits. Think about ingratitude. Help the wrong person, forgive the wrong person, trust the wrong person, and you create vipers who know exactly where to strike. Think about ambition without loyalty. Allow such a man to rise too high, and one day you'll wake up with him sitting in your seat, wondering how you ever missed the warning signs. And morality. When you allow someone to guilt-trip you, shame you, manipulate you using ideals, you don't just lose a debate, you lose authority. Because now emotions, not strength, determine power. And once that happens, anyone with a sad story or a loud voice can dethrone you. Here's the truth most men never dare to swallow. Collapse rarely comes from your enemies. It comes from the people you were too soft to confront. A rotten empire doesn't fall from an outside invasion. It falls because the leader refused to draw lines. It falls because the poison wasn't stopped early. It falls because small cracks became fractures, and fractures became collapse. Machiavelli never told us to be cruel. He told us to be clear. Clear about what matters. Clear about what threatens your foundation. Clear about what must never be tolerated, not once, not ever. Because when you fail to act early, you will eventually be forced to act too late. And by then, your army is gone, your allies are gone, and your power is already slipping through your fingers. People learn from what you allow. Your tolerance becomes their strategy. Your silence becomes their permission. And the moment you hesitate, the moment you bend, the moment you forgive what should never be forgiven, you turn your throne into a chair anyone can attempt to sit on. So understand this. True power isn't about being loved. It isn't about being feared. It isn't about being admired. True power is the ability to draw a line and never let anyone cross it. If you want to lead, if you want to build something that lasts, if you want to stand in a world designed to challenge you, then carve this into your mind. Punish early so you don't have to punish often. Protect your boundaries so you don't have to repair your kingdom. And never tolerate the behaviors that quietly destroy you. When you understand that, you stop being replaceable, you stop being fragile, you become the man no storm can break. We've exposed all 7 behaviors Machiavelli warned us about, but now we reach the part most men never confront, the part where knowledge must turn into action. Because understanding power means nothing if you don't use that understanding to change the way you lead, the way you judge character, and the way you protect your position from the silent poisons around you. Let's strip away all illusions. Most leaders don't fall because they are weak. Most men don't fail because someone outsmarted them. Most empires don't collapse because their enemies were too strong. They fall because the leader refused to see clearly. He tolerated betrayal. He forgave disrespect. He ignored ingratitude. He believed flattery. He trusted ambition without loyalty. He allowed morality to be used against him. He hoped that problems would fix themselves. But Machiavelli would say, hope is not a strategy. Tolerance is not wisdom. Silence is not strength. Power rots from within long before it falls from the outside. Every time you let a damaging behavior slide, you aren't just avoiding conflict. You're rewriting the laws of your kingdom. You're teaching everyone around you how far they can push you, how much disrespect you'll accept, and how easily your boundaries can be stretched. And here is the truth most men never admit. People test you, always. And they test you based on what you tolerate. The one who betrays you once will do it again, because you showed them there is no price. The coward in leadership will keep hesitating, because you never demanded action. The flatterer will keep feeding your ego, because you rewarded empty praise. The disrespectful will challenge you again, because your silence told them it was safe. The ungrateful will keep taking, because you kept giving. The ambitious but disloyal will rise, because you didn't control the threat. The moral manipulator will guilt-trip you again, because guilt worked the first time. These behaviors don't go away. They escalate. They multiply. They spread. This is why Machiavelli insisted on a principle that modern people misunderstand completely. Punish early so you never have to punish severely. A small correction today prevents a crisis tomorrow. A firm boundary now prevents betrayal later. A decisive response stops future disrespect before it begins. Leadership is not about constant fighting. Leadership is about preventing most conflicts from ever becoming conflicts at all. Strong boundaries create order. Weak boundaries create chaos and eventually collapse. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to yell. You don't have to rule with fear. You simply must make your standards unmistakably clear. Because here is the truth. If people don't know your boundaries, they will walk all over them. If you don't defend your authority, others will test it. If you don't hold people accountable, they will repeat the same poisons until your throne cracks under the weight. Think about every great leader who lasted, whether in history, business, war, or influence. They weren't always the smartest or the strongest, but they were the ones who understood this. Tolerance writes the rules of your downfall. Every ignored insult becomes permission. Every forgiven betrayal becomes precedent. Every unpunished challenge becomes a blueprint for the next competitor. Every act of mercy given to the wrong person becomes a weapon pointed back at you. People do not learn from your intentions, they learn from your reactions. If you let someone cross a boundary once, they will cross it again further, deeper, more boldly. If you let someone publicly challenge you once, they will try it again louder, before a bigger audience. If you let someone drain your energy, they will keep draining until there is nothing left. This is not negativity. This is human nature. And Machiavelli's brilliance was seeing this long before psychology could explain it. So here is what you must carry forward. Your throne is only as strong as the boundaries you enforce. Your inner circle is only as loyal as the behaviors you reward. Your power is only as stable as the standards you refuse to compromise. Draw the line early. Defend it consistently. Correct quietly when possible, firmly when necessary, and most importantly, believe people the first time they show you their nature, not the second, not the third, not after they've already weakened your foundation. Because collapse never happens suddenly. Collapse is simply the final stage of 1,000 ignored warnings. But here's what matters most. If you're still watching, still listening, still absorbing every lesson, it means something important about you. You aren't the man who gets manipulated by smiles. You aren't the man who gets fooled by flattery. You aren't the man who collapses under guilt or emotional pressure. You aren't the man who tolerates poison just to avoid conflict. You're the man who wants to see the truth behind people. You're the man who wants to protect what's his. You're the man who wants to build something that cannot be quietly eaten alive from the inside. You're the man who refuses to hand his power to those who never deserved it. So stay sharp, stay awake, stay loyal to your standards, because your standards are what keep your throne standing. Draw the line, enforce the line, and never let anyone cross it without consequence. That is how empires survive. That is how leaders endure. That is how power stays yours. In the end, everything Machiavelli taught comes down to one truth. Power survives only when the one holding it refuses to ignore what destroys it. You don't need to be cruel, heartless, or feared by everyone around you. But you must be clear about what you will not tolerate, clear about who deserves a place in your circle, clear about the difference between loyalty and convenience, between truth and flattery, between moral guidance and moral manipulation. Most leaders fall not because they lacked strength, but because they lacked awareness. They forgave what should never have been forgiven. They waited when they should have acted. They hoped a poisonous behavior would fix itself instead of cutting it out early. And by the time they realized the damage, the rot had already reached the foundation. But that won't be you. If you've stayed through every lesson in this video, then you're not someone who collapses quietly. You're someone who wants to lead with clarity, build with discipline, and protect your throne from those who smile while plotting. You're the kind of man who chooses awareness over ignorance, boundaries over weakness, and strength over softness that destroys. So carry these principles forward. Watch people closely. Act early. Protect your standards. And never forget, power doesn't fall from a single blow. It dies when you tolerate the things you know you shouldn't. Stay strong, stay sharp, and stay away. The end.